Hello everyone, I'm Carl Lund. Today I'm going to be telling this little bit of the story of businessman Jack Tramiel and his business philosophy, business is war. Tramiel was a significant figure in the emergence of the home computer market. He was born in Poland in 1928. He was sent to Auschwitz along with his family during World War II. During that time, his father died, although his mother survived. After the war, he joined the U.S. Army, and in the Army, he learned how to repair typewriters. He started a typewriter repair shop in the Bronx. A few years later, as he was enlarging the company from just repairing typewriters to also selling typewriters and other business equipment, he moved to Toronto, both because he had family there and also because there were fewer regulations. It was easier and cheaper to import typewriters from Europe to resell than it was to import them into America. Commodore under Tramiel grew from a typewriter repair company into an office equipment company. On a trip to Japan, Tramiel became fascinated with the newly released technology of handheld calculators, and Commodore moved into that business. A few years later, in the mid-1970s, Commodore almost went bankrupt because Texas Instruments entered the market, and what emerged were what were called the calculator wars, which were wars over price and features. Tramiel would take those lessons of the calculator wars and apply them himself to what were called the home computer wars of the 1980s. And a big factor of Commodore's eventual success was its use of vertical integration. Commodore did most things themselves when they made computers. And this started when Tramiel purchased MOS Technologies, a chip manufacturer, in the mid-1970s. This allowed Commodore to acquire chips for its consumer electronics at cost. And the fact that they now had these chips to use led Commodore to invent one of the first personal computers, the Commodore PET, released in 1977, the same year as the Apple II. And for the first several years of its existence, the PET did very, very well. It actually outsold the Apple II. The success of the PET was enlarged by the success of two Commodore home computers released in the early 1980s. The VIC-20 was Commodore's first color computer. And even though the VIC-20 had very little RAM and was arguably underpowered, it sold very cheaply. And because of that, it became very popular. The next year, Commodore released the Commodore 64. And the Commodore 64, unlike the VIC-20, was not underpowered. It had 64K of RAM. And it may have been the first home computer to actually ship with that much memory. As RAM prices went down, Commodore cut the price of the computer. And this led to price wars with Texas Instruments, with Atari, and with others. And Commodore was far and away the successful winner of those price wars. The Commodore 64 today is considered the best-selling computer of all time. But at the height of Commodore's success with the 64, in 1984, there was some corporate intrigue. Tramiel either quit or was forced out by Commodore's chair, Irving Gould. It was perhaps due to Tramiel wanting places for his sons at the company, but Tramiel could be very mercurial. He was definitely a micromanager. He was also very, very cheap. Every expense had to be approved by him, and he really wanted his company to run on a shoestring budget. Within a few months of leaving Commodore, Warner Communications sought Tramiel out to buy its struggling Atari division. Atari was losing $1 million a day, partially because Commodore was out competing it in the market. Warner actually loaned Tramiel the money to buy Atari. Commodore and Atari had been arch rivals throughout the early 1980s, and now that rivalry would only escalate. The new Atari rushed an impressive 16-bit computer to market. The Atari ST series, released in 1985, 1 year after the first popular 16-bit computer, the Apple Macintosh, released. It was so similar to Apple's Mac that critics quickly named it the Jackintosh. Unlike the Mac, it had color, a larger keyboard, an operating system based in ROM rather than on disk to make it quicker to use, and it cost less than half the price. Unfortunately, Atari failed in the computer market, but the ST was an important machine. It was widely used in music production. It was incredibly popular in Europe. Unfortunately, sometimes Tramiel would market it in Europe at the expense of its place in the US. The disk drive maker JTS merged into Atari in 1996, officially ending Atari computers. Jack Tramiel died on April 8, 2012 at the age of 83. His legacy is important. He popularized the home computer. As his New York Times obituary noted, he did this by slashing prices and marketing computers in mass market stores like Kmart. Time referred to him as the anti-Steve Jobs, because Tramiel said he wanted to serve the masses, not the classes. The Commodore 64 and the Atari ST did just that. Tramiel saw markets that were emerging. He was, when he wanted to be, a master marketer. He said that Commodore was primarily a marketing company, and he used business techniques of vertical integration to ensure profitability and to be able to make his products at a price low enough that many, many, many people could afford them. It's a remarkable man with remarkable computers that he helped to create.